Welcome to Synergetic Culture. My name is Adam Bieber, and I am your host, and I'm so glad that you're joining me today on our podcast and YouTube channel. I am sitting with a great friend of mine, Trey McKnight. And Trey, before I introduce him, I just want to tell you a little bit about him because he's a remarkable person. Trey has an incredible background, and I'm going to share just some of the highlights, and he'll share some too, but Trey's been a firefighter. Trey's been a landscaper. He's a worship leader. He's got an incredible voice. He's talented as a musician. He was also a student pastor for one of the largest church organizations in the country, probably around the globe. He is also the director of one of the largest camp organizations for middle school and high school students, where they impact thousands of students every year. And he is the host of one of my favorite podcasts right now. It's called the Inspire to Move podcast, which it just recently launched. So you can get in, as one of the first people to jump on this bandwagon.
Get in early.
Yes, get in early. Do like me, go and subscribe to it. You can look it up right now while you're watching or listening. We're going to talk about it a little bit at the end as well and throughout. And then most importantly, Trey is a husband to an incredible wife named Jamie, and they got two adorable sons. I'll plug his social media at the end so you can follow and go and see what I'm talking about. But Trey, thank you so much for coming on the Synergetic Culture podcast. Welcome.
Bro, I'm honored. Honored to be here, and I got to ask you, who pumped you all that information? Because
I was going to say, I've known you for years now. So I used to know Trey from a distance. When he was a student pastor, I kind of would hear him speak and would see him at different retreats and stuff. And so I knew of him, heard him speak, heard some of his story, and then we connected. And he's been walking through life with me for the last 2 years almost. And
I think one of the first places that we actually started chatting was actually on one of the stops that we were speaking on, right? I think it was we were. I don't remember what.
I know exactly
city
where
it was in.
we were in Pittsburgh.
It was, yes, You're right. You're right.
So we traveled one year together across the country on tour with the Rethink group, and there was a handful of us that after one of the nights of programming, we decided to go get food because we were all hungry, and everybody went back to the hotel, and ended up being three of us sitting at a table at a restaurant that happened to be open late, and we just started chatting, and I was just like, dude, I thought this dude was awesome before I knew him, and now I'm sitting across the table talking to him, and I'm like, this guy's insane. So I kept hitting him up, and I was like,
insane, maybe, yes,
in a good way. I just kept hitting him up, saying, Trey, can we please get together? And so we got breakfast, and now we've been doing that once a month for almost 2 years. So it's been awesome,
which has been really cool for me too, because I'm a huge relationship person. I love building relationships, making relationships, connecting with people, building community, all that. And it's been really cool to track along with you. It's when we do what we do, I mean, both of us travel a lot and connect with a lot of people. Yeah. It's, and a lot of that is very surface level. When you connect with people, when you see people, when you meet people, on the road, there's, hey, how's it going? Oh, I'm Trey. Oh, I'm Adam, whatever, and it's all right, cool, let's stay connected. And then you never talk to them again until,
You just like their photo, watch their Instagram stories, which is how a lot of us stay connected.
Totally. But it's been cool to be able to really actually stay connected with you. It just has taken this intentional pursuit, really, to stay connected and kind of start to get to learn each other's stories, and which, we've gone deep on a lot of things, so which has been really cool. So I've been grateful for our relationship, man, and it's been awesome just to see all the things God's doing in your life, and how you're growing and just walking through things. This dude, I got to tell you, if you don't know Adam Bieber, let me just tell you, this guy has one of the best attitudes about anything and everything in life when it comes to just digging in and being intentional and taking steps toward the things that he's wanting to achieve. I can promise you that. Bro, I truly believe you're going to do amazing things. You're going to have an impact on a lot of people. I'm really excited that you're doing this podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm supposed to pump you up because you're a guest on this podcast, and you're pumping me up. I don't know what to do with my hands right now. Okay, so before we jump into it, because there's a purpose for us chatting today. We're going to talk about some of your experiences professionally, how it relates to impacting culture. And like you said, we've gone deep. We've talked professionally. We've talked personally.
Yep.
you're walking through stuff with me right now that we're not going to share on this podcast. But I mean, we go deep. And so I'm excited to talk about some of those things. But before we do, I need you to plug your podcast. I need you to plug the Inspire to Move podcast.
This is your podcast.
No. Because I love the whole concept. There's such a purpose. There's intentionality here. In the people that you interview and just the whole heart behind it. So just explain the 5 F's and kind of the goal. And then at the end, we'll plug it again.
Well, that's super gracious of you. It's called the Inspire to Move podcast, just launched in June of 2020. And essentially, in a nutshell, I discovered a few years ago my life mission, my purpose was to inspire people to move toward positive life change. And I recognized probably into my 30s that it was going to take, in order to move toward positive life change and the things that you want to achieve and do, it's first you have to recognize what you're specifically built for. So I believe that everybody's uniquely built for something, for the impact that they can have on the people around and the influence that you're going to have. I believe everybody has influence, whether that's with a large organization, whether it's, leading lots and lots of people, whether it's standing on big stages, or if it's just the influence that you have with your wife or with your husband and with your kids and just the people who are in your close-knit group. Everybody has influence. So what are you going to do with that?
That's good.
And so in developing this knowledge and this thought about being intentional about things in life, discovering your purpose, living in that, because there's so much freedom there.
Yeah.
And for me, and what I like to share with others, is that there are basically 5 areas of life, and they happen to all be F's, where if I'm intentional about these things, then everything else falls in place. And it's faith, family, fitness, following, and finances. Following would be leadership.
Yep.
And so if we can be intentional about that, wrap the whole thing in fun, because I think it's important for us to have fun, then it leads us to this intentionally designed future. Yeah. So that's the podcast. And we have great people. We're going to have you on soon. So
that's awesome.
We have great people that are just sharing life and, experiences and the things that they've learned and how to move toward positive life change.
Yeah. I love it. And you can find it, the Inspire to Move podcast, anywhere you can get a podcast. Yep. It's a great, and what I love about it too, similar to how we like to do things, it's not like drug out super long. Like these are bite size, just nuggets of truth, wisdom, helpful. It's inspiring, it's encouraging, and it's like 25 minutes. And so
that's what I aim for. Yeah. What I've discovered is the more conversations that I have, these people who are coming on are so amazing that they have so many great things to say that it ends up going longer and longer. So I'm trying to stay within certain periods of time, but I can promise you there are definitely nuggets. And even if you only listen for portions of it, 5-10 minutes, chunks at a time, you're going to get something valuable out of it.
And I love the variety, because I feel like anybody can kind of find themselves in the story. You're going to talk to people with different backgrounds, different experiences, men, women, people that have had really, really cool life stories. So check it out. You can find it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Yeah. And take a listen to that. You will love listening to Trey and the people that he talks with.
But don't go yet, because right now, you've got Adam Bieber on the Synergetic Culture podcast.
There we go.
Right here.
There we go. So let's talk about it, Trey. Let's talk about culture, because this is something that's super passionate for me, and I know it is for you.
Yeah.
As we mentioned, we've gone deep on a lot of different things, and as a little caveat, we're going to discuss toxicity today.
Okay.
But I don't want to discuss it.
Fun.
I don't want to discuss it in a way that throws shade, because that's not what we're here to do.
Sure.
We're here to acknowledge the fact that it's real, and that there are probably a lot of people who can empathize with some of the toxic environments that you and 100%. I have both worked in. Yep. And Trey's got a unique vantage point, because he entered into leadership of a team during a time of transition, and there was some toxicity. So we're going to talk about that. Why don't you just kick us off? Like, tell me about what that was like to enter into that, and some of the things you didn't know going into it, and just kind of how it impacted your strive to get to a healthier culture.
Yeah. Well, to start, I'll say, backing up even before that, because I think that where I am today, where I sit today, is a culmination of every experience that I've had leading up to now. Yeah. I think that's all of us. I think if we choose to learn from the experiences that we have, whether it's high experiences on the mountaintop or low experiences in the valley, as long as we walk away from each experience, from each circumstance, from each situation, learning something,
yep,
grabbing onto it and saying, okay, this is something that makes me more self-aware about myself, or this is something that has, given me more insight about people around me or how people might respond to certain things or whatever that may be. I think that is what lends toward us being able to handle situations that we find ourselves in or that we choose to step into that then help us move culture in the right direction if given the opportunity.
Yeah.
So I would say that even before the specific circumstance that you're talking about, I would back up even a few years prior to that and say that for me, I've done a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time. I mean, you mentioned earlier, I was a firefighter for 10 years. During that time, so if you don't know anything about firefighters, in most cases, we work very odd schedules. It's, we worked a 24 on, 48 off schedule. So I would be working every 3 days, but then in the 2 days in between, there was time to do other things.
Yeah.
So I literally just explored a bunch of different things while trying to, make a little extra cash, but then also like, hey, what are some things that I can do?
Did you sell insurance for a little bit?
So yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, so I never sold it. I was a recruiter.
Okay. Yeah. That's right.
But yes, I worked for an insurance company for a very short period of time. I've been a pastor, a speaker, live event host.
Yep.
Fly planes, or did. I haven't flown in like years. I've been a flower delivery driver. I was a personal trainer for a while. The list goes on. I worked at a recording studio for like 2 days.
Yeah.
Got everything that I needed about that in 2 days. That's a story for a different day.
Yeah.
But so anyway, all of that to say, I've done a lot of different things, and the ones that have stood out the most, or were obviously the ones where I spent the majority of the time. In the fire department, I worked a lot of different stations where sometimes the culture was great. And you could go station to station, and depending on the leadership, they say everything flows from the top, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got a great captain, or a great lieutenant in the station, everybody loved working in that environment because it's like you develop this synergy. There's this energy behind the synergy that's there.
Yep.
And then you see the other side of it too, where I would go down the road and travel, for a shift and see just a poor culture based off of the leader that was there.
Yeah.
And so I think I got to experience a lot of different things, both good and bad, that allowed me to walk away saying, okay, if I'm ever in a position to lead, I want to be that type of leader.
Yeah.
Or if I'm ever in a position to lead, I don't want that.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then one of those experiences was once I left the fire department and went into sales. Incredible organization, incredible offering that we had. But the culture was really, really horrible. And if you spent any time in sales, that depending on the organization, you can have a great sales experience and you can have very poor sales experiences. And sometimes, people are valued as people. Other times they're valued as the numbers that they bring in. Now, granted, every organization is driven by the numbers in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So to be in a situation where if you're not producing numbers and they don't care about you outside of that, it shows.
Yeah.
And it creates a very toxic environment that's very difficult to live in. Now, what I learned from that was I can talk to anybody. I can take a beating. I can be yelled at. I can be fussed at. I can feel the pressure of not meeting my goals or feel the triumph of meeting my goals and helping bring others up around you, or feeling the pressure of not supporting the team like you should be because everybody else is doing things, but you've got nothing working. It's like this ebb and flow of the sales world is weird.
It is. And just to throw this in there, it's oftentimes fear-based. Yeah. Which is the worst thing for a healthy culture.
And that was a lot of the culture that I was in during that time.
Yep. Yeah.
So I very well could have walked away from that and said, this was a negative experience. I consider it a positive because it really thickened my skin in ways that I needed to, and allowed me really even now to be able to have difficult conversations with people that prior, if I had not had that experience, I probably would have a lot of fear about and struggle to do. And then to have difficult conversations now in the situation that I'm in, sometimes with my team, that I would be less apt to approach if I had not had to have a lot of those early on. Yeah. So I'm taking the long way to get there. That's okay. I'm rambling on here, but I say all that to say situations that I've been in before prepared me for stepping into a very rough situation where when I stepped in the organization, there had been some pretty difficult things that had happened, both just with mishandling of certain funds and things like that, but then also there were some toxic underlying things that were happening amongst some of the crew that was there. And so when I stepped into it, I was made aware of a lot of the toxicity. And I think any leader stepping into a situation, you learn very quickly what's working and what's not.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And I think one of the best things, and this is not to my credit in any way, but I have been taught this, is when you first step in, assess the situation first. I think that one of the biggest mistakes that a leader can make is to step into a situation and just start making changes immediately without first understanding where the organization is from a culture standpoint.
Yeah.
If you can understand, and it doesn't have to take a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that a previous position that I was in, I took too long to try to understand where it was, and then I took even longer to act on that, and that worked negatively against me and against the team. So when I left that position and started in the new position, I knew, okay, I needed to make some changes quickly, but I didn't need to jump the gun and make those decisions and those changes prior to understanding where the organization was and what the consequential outcome would be of those situations based off of not just the health of the organization and what we do, but how it was going to affect the lives of the people involved.
So let me ask you this then. Let's say there's a leader of a team listening right now, and either they just acquired this team, just stepped into this role of leadership, or they've been in the role of leadership and they're like, hey, this is me. I need some help. Practically, how do you assess that? How do you assess what needs to change, and how do you assess, that like start, stop, continue, or stop. You know what I'm saying? Like what should you start doing? What should you stop doing? What should you continue doing? And how do you do that? How do you assess that?
First and foremost, listen.
Yeah.
And that may look a little bit different depending on the organization you're in. If you're in a large organization, it's, we're talking tens, if not hundreds of people. It's going to take listening intently to the right voices. For me, it was a small organization. So I'm coming into 15 people. I literally made it a point to meet frequently one-on-one with each of those people multiple times in the first few weeks that I was here.
Yeah.
And it essentially was to ask a lot of questions. How has this worked? How has this not worked?
Yep.
What has been the way that we've done blank historically?
Yep.
How long have you been here?
Yeah.
What have you felt as a result? How has this affected you?
Yep.
How has this affected other people on the team?
You know what I'm hearing you say is building a relationship with the people that you work with is vital.
Yes.
Like you can't just stay. I look at it two ways. Transparency is more transactional.
Yeah.
Authenticity is more relational. You can't have one without the other. So
say it louder. Say it louder.
I'll say it again. Transparency is transactional.
Yeah.
So that would be like, sit down, here's your numbers, here's your job description, go.
Yep.
It's great.
Yep.
You got to do that.
Yep. Check the box.
Check the box.
Right.
But if you do that without having an authenticity piece that's more relational, how are you? How long have you been here? What do you like? What do you not like? Creating a safe environment for that relationship to be honest and open. Yeah. Only then can you kind of start to take those steps past that. So
I've met so many people who are in leadership positions who don't understand that.
Yeah.
They step in thinking, well, I'm the boss. Or I'm the leader.
Or I'm just the fun guy. Or the fun parent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Good cop or bad cop. Like you think you have to take one, and it's really a nice combination of both.
Yes. People, I mean, and this is super cliche. I don't even know who said this first. I probably should. But it's like people don't remember, or they don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah.
I butchered that. People don't care what you know until they know that you care about them.
Yep.
And I've learned that too. I mean, admittedly, in part, I mean, even just recently, just this year, there was a particular person on our team who said to me, hey, when you said this particular thing, I shut down because that to me communicated, not intentionally, and it wasn't until several weeks later that he told me this, but that communicated to me that you were focused on something different than what I actually cared about.
Yeah.
Which is like dagger in the heart,
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
oh geez, how did I miss that?
Yeah.
But I think it's important as a leader for you to focus on like what it is that drives those people.
Yeah.
The people that work under you or with you or alongside you, whatever that looks like. When you step into that situation for the first time and you're starting to learn, you've got to listen to the people who are there.
Yep.
And you've got to value their voices.
Yep.
And when they feel heard and they feel seen, they will become your biggest supporters.
Absolutely.
Your biggest fans, which is huge when it comes to building culture.
Yeah.
Because you can't build culture by yourself.
Yep.
You have to have people in your tribe who are willing to be the extension of what it is that you're trying to grow.
Yep. As you were talking, I just thought of, from my experience, sales, because we both have done sales.
Yeah.
I had a boss in sales, and I'm not going to use his last name because I didn't ask him if I could say this, but I'm going to say something nice, so I'm sure he's going to say yes.
We'll call him Phil.
His name is Tyler. Okay. So
right.
I had a boss in sales. His name was Tyler, and we were wired very differently.
Yeah.
And he acknowledged the fact that we were wired differently.
Yeah.
And he spent time in my first few weeks of onboarding really trying to figure out what makes me tick.
Yeah.
And then feeding into that relationship wise, not just doing what worked well for him. Mm-hmm. And one of those things is, you mentioned at the beginning, we're both very relational people. Yep. So like, I have to be able to connect with the people that I'm working with, up or down. Yep. Like I need to know that like there's relationship here. And he's the same way. It just looks different. It looks more he's just very regimented. He knows how to get things done. And so there were times where like days would go by and he'd be 2 doors down and like, like I'd be like, "Are you there? Hi, hello." But he would take time out of his day to come. I mean, even if it was just tap on the door, see that I'm on a call, would say like, "Come down to my office after work," and then I'd come down and we would just chat for a second.
Yeah.
And that would like totally fill my cup. Hey, how's your son doing?
It's good.
You guys okay? You guys doing all right? And that like, to me, I was like, one, I know he's not wired that way. Mm-hmm. So for him to look at me and go, okay, how can I better connect with this guy that's working under me? Made such a difference. And you're right. There's a loyalty there that we don't work together full time anymore. I'm doing some contract work with him now. Like, for us to be able to, like, there's a loyalty in that relationship because of how he treated me. So as a leader of a team, we're talking about taking steps to change the culture and shift out of toxicity.
Yep.
Relationship.
Yeah.
Starting with building on a relationship, consistency. I heard you say that, like you regularly met with your people to get to know them, to figure out what makes them tick, to find out what's working, what's not working, so that you could better assess the organization as a whole instead of just coming in and being like, we're cutting it, which happens all the time.
Oh, 100%.
When leadership shifts, that happens all the time.
Yep.
So tell me about the journey, because it didn't change overnight. No. You didn't sit down and have all these conversations in the first 6 weeks of being in this position and then everything was better.
Right.
So what took place? How did you get to where you were able to shift the culture from fear, toxicity, wondering if leadership is handling things appropriately, correctly, like all of that? How did you shift that mindset?
Yeah, for me personally, I gave a lot of hugs initially, both physical and emotional hugs.
Yeah,
but that doesn't work for everybody, because not everybody can come across sincere in giving a hug. I'm kind of halfway joking, but kind of halfway serious too. No, I think it is. It's going back to what you said. It's relationship. So it's taking the steps to build the relationship. So showing that you care before you try to, get something out of someone.
Yeah.
You just invite them along the journey and say, "Hey, I'm trying to understand what you've been walking through, because I want to help."
Yep.
And I think when you're consistent with that moves it in the right direction. 2, I think that you have to, like you said, be consistent. 3, I think you have to take ownership. And that's one thing that I think I probably failed at early on, was taking full ownership, because I was afraid to make too many moves and abandon the people who had entrusted their thoughts and their feelings with me.
Yeah.
But I learned very quickly. And I think that it's important as the leader to take ownership and recognize, hey, you're in the position to steward it well, because the people who are working with you are counting on you to help them move in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that when you take that ownership, it shows that not only, hey, he's built the relationship, or she, whoever you are, he or she has built the relationship. They've taken the time to listen and to understand. I feel seen, I feel heard, and now they're actually taking ownership to make adjustments as needed, whether that's a small adjustment or a big adjustment.
Yep.
Specifically for us, what it meant was I got out, and this is the next point. I think you can't do it alone.
Yeah.
And so I sought a lot of counsel from people who were maybe a step or a season ahead of me, who had been there before.
Yep.
I said, hey, here's our situation. This is how I'm thinking through it. Don't just go blindly and be like, here, what do I do?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
absolutely.
people that you trust, who have maybe been in the situation before, who you respect as leaders and who have walked through this before, and say, here's what I'm thinking. This is our situation. here's how I think that we need to move on it. Would you affirm, or are there things that you would change?
Yeah.
And in most cases, the 2 or 3 people that I entrusted with that said, okay, I would change this. I would do this differently. Yeah. Or yes, go with this, keep me informed, and then we'll just kind of see what happens.
Yep.
And then part of that was bringing in an advisor who walked very closely with us. And her job is consulting with firms, organizations, nonprofits, in order to move them in the right direction in culture. Wow. And so she was an expert on this.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, what do we need to do in order to move us in the right direction? And so she literally came and walked alongside us as we started going through, okay, let's reassess. What are our core values? Do we still believe these things? Are we still these people?
Wow.
And then enact those things, and then invite people in on the journey. So we didn't just sit in a room and decide this is what we're going to be about. We invited everybody who was a part of the organization into that conversation and said, what are we going to be about?
Yep.
This thing that we've got on the wall, are we still about this? Is this still something that we want to be about it? Is it clear?
Yeah.
You know, does this fit our purpose and our mission?
Yeah.
And when we assess all those things, bring all those things together, then they felt the ownership as well. And so now you have an entire organization of people who also feel ownership for what you're doing. And when they feel ownership, that's when you start to see the needle move.
Yep.
Because it's not just you doing it.
Yeah.
They
absolutely.
see you taking ownership and seeking counsel from outside yourself,
Yep.
but then also inviting them into the process, both from a relationship standpoint behind closed doors, and then now we're coming together to do this together, to develop what the culture is going to look like moving forward.
Yep.
And so now we have this 2.0 circumstance where, hey, this is what we've walked through, but we're moving forward now.
Yep.
Now, did that mean that we didn't still have some people who were hanging on and struggling with certain things that had happened in the past?
Yeah.
No. Like there were still some of those things, and you just have to continue to walk with those people and work through that.
Yeah.
But as you do that consistently and over time, it starts to move you in the right direction. Sometimes slowly and sometimes fast. But you have to stay in the grind and keep moving. Keep doing
so I hear several things. I hear relationships. I hear consistency. I hear teachability.
Yep.
I mean, if I was on your team and I got to witness, which I did kind of from the sideline, get to witness and see you striving with help, asking people for help, giving people, similar to how you and I have our relationship where I'm like, hey, Trey, speak into this.
Yep.
And you have the freedom to be honest and open and share things that might be hard for me to hear, constructive, whatever it is. And for you to enter into those and be honest and open with your team about, hey, I'm seeking counsel about this. I've got mentors that have walked through really challenging things like us. They're going to help us, you know, to bring somebody in to speak into it. That speaks volumes to the team that you're leading. And then that invite into the ownership of it. Like, hey, this is not for me. This is for us. And this is yours to take ownership of too. This is not just something that we're going to scribble on a wall and nice script and say, these are our core values. Like, come into this conversation of why we are who we are.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so good.
And then something else that I'll say on that too, because as we saw in our circumstance, just because you go through those steps does not mean that you're not still going to lose some people. Because whatever happened before you got there as the leader may have gotten certain people, a certain individual, a certain group of people to a certain point where they're willing to dig in and still fight and try to create something good and something new. But sometimes there are things that happen that people just cannot get past. And you may lose those people, whether it's you recognize as the leader that they need to go, or they realize, I think my time here is done.
Yep.
Either one of those is okay.
Yes, that's exactly what I was about to say. And it's okay.
Either one of those is okay, because when you have the courage to make that call, or they have the courage to make that call for themselves, what that does is it, one, opens up the door for you to now bring in someone who may more closely fit with what is the now 2.0 of what the direction we're going when it's fresh start. And what may be even more important in that situation is that now you or that person has had the courage to help them open up and potentially move towards something that's better suited for them. Which then is what I'm passionate about. It's like, I want to help anybody, whether you're going to work in my organization or in a different organization.
I was about to say,
move towards something that is what you're uniquely designed for.
Yes. Like you had someone come on your team, rock star. And then they had an opportunity come up. And rather than being like, oh, are you sure you want to do, holding them back because they were so good for your team. you were like, cool, we're a launch pad for you. How can we help?
Yes.
And you sent them off, and now that individual, she's doing incredible things.
Yes.
And it's like, wow.
Yep.
But to be able to have that freedom to lead that way is so cool to me. I think that's rare. It's unique.
Yep.
I think it was vital to the change happening with this team. Okay, so I want to pivot a little bit because we're talking to everybody. Everybody can affect the culture. Mm-hmm. So you had individuals on this team that weren't necessarily in positions of leadership.
Right.
But let's talk about that. Like if I'm listening as an individual on a toxic team and I'm going, I have no leadership, but what can I do? Because it matters to me to make a difference here. It matters to me to see change. I want to help in a way that's helpful, not like I'm, undermining leadership, but like, how do you do that? What did people do on this team? And like, what do you think people should do moving forward? Like, give us some insight on that.
Yeah, I think in part it goes back to the ownership piece.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, one thing that I used to hear, I learned this lesson a lot, and I think I'd heard it before, but I learned this lesson a lot when I was with the fire department. They were really big on, hey, the customer comes first. Now you think like fire service, like there's not a customer. No, technically there are. I mean, in our particular jurisdiction, they were taxpayers, and taxpayers pay our salary, and so therefore they are a customer when we show up on what is the worst day of their life in most cases.
Yeah, yeah.
So the customer's always right. We look at it from a customer-focused standpoint. But one of the biggest things that I learned during my 10 years there was no matter what I do, whether I was on duty or off duty, I represented the department.
Yep.
There were people who were going to see me either in uniform or just hanging out with my friends who knew Trey works for blank fire department.
Yep.
And this is how he's behaving, and this is how he's acting.
And
I just hope to God that every time that statement, it was followed with, man, I really respect him.
Yeah.
This fire department must be a great department because they hire people like Trey.
Yeah. That's what you hope for.
Yeah. And what I know about my time there is once I realized that, and it was pretty quick. I mean, they ingrained that into us from the very beginning. Everything you do represents that badge, represents what you do. I've taken that and I've put that into every organization that I've worked in since. I'm like, okay, when I worked at Paycom, I represented Paycom in everything that I did.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that it was the only thing in my life or the most important thing in my life, but I represented that organization because I worked for them.
Yep.
Working at Big Stuff, working at, some of the churches that I've worked at, working with Northwestern Mutual, like all these different places, I was a representative of that organization.
Yeah, I mean, you just got off the stage of the Global Leadership Network's big summit with all kinds of leaders from all over the globe. You guys did it virtually, but you were still on a stage hosting. And today you sit here representing that organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. There's an extreme ownership there. There's
100%.
There's an awareness. It's a
responsibility that I have.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, as the person who may not be sitting in the position of leadership, I said it earlier, everybody has influence.
Yep.
So if you have influence and if you represent the organization that you work with and there's a toxic situation that you're involved in, first and foremost, do everything that you can to not add to the toxicity. 2, you have a responsibility and an opportunity to rewrite the narrative.
Yep.
If you are on the inside, if you have whatever knowledge you have about the organization on the inside, it is your job to make sure that as the representative of the organization, you do and say and behave in a way that speaks greatness about the organization, about the people that you work with.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that you can't, vent with, a close advisor or somebody that you work closely with or anything like that. But with anything outward facing, it is your responsibility to take ownership of your representation at the organization and speak boldly good things about that organization.
Yeah. Cause you and I have both sat across from people that are part of organizations, and all that happened was just talking smack.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, just putting down leadership, putting down structure, putting down how things are run. Well, if things were run this way, then it'd be better. And it's like, it just screams toxicity. And you wonder, okay, if you're going to sit here and gossip about your organization like that with me, who are you doing it with within the organization? Absolutely. Like when that,
and it's okay to have thoughts and feelings about, well, hey, this should be run differently. This should be doing, okay. What are you doing to help that situation?
Yeah.
Is you sitting here crying about it to people who can't do anything about it? Is that going to help?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. What's within your control?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the ownership I take, the way I represent it,
yes,
the way that I, buy into wherever we're going, within appropriate reason. Like I need to buy in. I need to show my leadership that I'm loyal to the direction they're taking us. Because if I don't agree, and I'm able to even speak that, I've been in meetings where it's open. You can, hey, does anybody have an opposing opinion? And you can share it without consequence.
Yep.
But then realizing that at the end of the day, the leader's going to make a call, and it's my job to jump on that train and run with him, not against him.
For as long as you're going to be in the organization, it's your job. And hopefully they've created a situation where you do have that freedom.
Yeah.
And I understand there's a lot of people that don't have that freedom.
Yeah.
There are a lot of leaders, unfortunately, who don't create an environment where it's safe to verbalize something that you feel differently about. But if you have that ability, and honestly, whether you have that ability or not, it's still your job as the representative to represent the organization, the company well. And if you can't get on board with that, you need to pay attention to that, because maybe it's time to go.
Yeah. I just finished Dr. Henry Cloud's book, Necessary Endings. And that's something to pay attention to. If there's an ending that needs to happen, like you said earlier, it's okay. It's okay if you have someone on your team that's not in the right spot. Doesn't mean they're a bad person. They're just not in the right position. We both have been there. It's okay if you're a member of a team and you feel like I'm not in the right spot. There's nothing wrong with you taking a step to create a necessary ending, which I would plug the book. I just finished it yesterday. It's a great book. Because it helps bring clarity and words around some of the things that I've felt and that I think lots of people feel when it comes to needing to move forward and move on. And so that's huge. That's a huge nugget.
And here's the only other thing that I'll say on that too is as the leader myself, I think very often people who are not sitting in the seat of leadership think that they can just talk smack about things and that it'll never get back to the leader. Let me just tell you, if the leader is doing his or her job, they will know.
It will always get
They
back.
will find out. And you can say things and your frustration and all that, but I'm just going to tell you, be careful who you talk to, because people talk and things very often get back. And that leader may or may not ever say anything to you about what you said or what you did that misrepresented the company or someone else in the company. But I guarantee you they will remember it and it will affect your opportunities moving forward.
That's huge.
So this is not, I mean, this is even bigger if you want to make it a selfish personal thing. Yes, you want to represent the organization well because they're paying you and they've trusted you. But this is where it becomes personal. This is where you're representing yourself well too. And if you're going to say or do things that are going to misrepresent someone else or another organization, essentially you hurt yourself and you look like an idiot.
And guess what? The job title doesn't go with you.
Exactly.
Yourself goes with you.
Yes.
So exactly.
So now you're looking down the road and you've started to develop a reputation, because guess what? I also have people who call me and say, hey, this person that used to work for you, whether you sent them as a reference or not, people are connected. I've had people call me and say, hey, you had this person work for you. What were they like? I'm like, oh, they mentioned me as a reference. No, but I just know that you work with them. So I just figured you as a friend, I just figured I'd call. And I'm like, all right, well, how honest do you want me to be? Because this person is great in this area, in this area, in this area, in this area. But I would also caution you on blank, because this was our experience. And so now those things that you thought were super innocent because you were frustrated and you have a right to, and that leadership didn't, and now it's following you.
Wow. All right, so let's sum this up. So from the position of a leader, you step into a team, you're leading a team, there's toxicity, there needs to be culture change. How do you do it? We talked about, you sum it up for us. What are action steps leaders can be taking today?
Relationships, build the relationship first. Assess and see what's happening before you start to make changes.
Good.
Don't wait too long to make those changes when you see a change that needs to be made. Be consistent. Take ownership.
So good. So good. Okay. And now from the team member, somebody who is a part of a team listening, going, I'm on a toxic team, or I've been in a toxic team. I didn't know what to do. Go ahead. Sum it up for us. Action steps.
Act as the leader. This is the way I didn't say this before, but I would say it itself. Take ownership in which you act as the leader yourself. One of our core values here at the organization I'm at now is own it. And what that means is, as a person who works here in this organization, I want everything that people see me do or say to be as if I were the leader, as if I was the one who owned this. None of us own it because it's a nonprofit. But I'm going to act in a way that I take ownership as if I were the owner or the leader. Because here's the thing, the owner, the leader, cares tremendously about the organization and about the people that they serve. So if I'm acting as the leader, whether I am the leader or not, it makes a difference.
Yep. And that's where that extreme ownership and representation comes in, because the leader cares.
Yep.
If I'm in a position as a part of a team and I show that same intentionality and that same authentic care for the mission, the vision, the direction, that speaks volumes to the people around you. And that's
100%.
Infectious. People look, they notice it, and then they go, okay, well, maybe, that I want to look like that. I want to do that. I want to lead like that. They're obviously doing something in their lane and doing it well, because look at them.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. It's
and
huge.
then extreme ownership.
Absolutely.
Both as a leader and as a member of a team.
Yeah.
Own it.
Yeah.
I love that. Gosh, Trey, you're like just filled with so much wisdom. It's so fun to sit and talk with you.
It's just the journey that I'm learning, still actively learning.
Yeah.
It's things that I've learned by my own mistakes and sometimes accidental success. But really, it is just a lot of trial and error. I mean, that we learn the best lessons when we fail, and then we pick ourselves back up and we keep moving forward. And that's what I try to do every day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, Trey, thank you so much for coming on
man.
the Synergetic Culture podcast. I think what you've shared is so important, so vital, and I hope it helps. It always encourages me to sit and talk with you, but I hope that it encourages the listeners today. So one more time, let me tell you this, TreyMcKnight.com. You can find more about the Inspire to Move podcast. You can subscribe there. You can get emails from him. You can read blogs. You can even book him. Like, listen to this man's voice. If you wanted to book him as a speaker, I didn't mention at the beginning, but I did mention halfway through Global Leadership Network.
Yeah.
And Trey is an event host, and so he's done things with Chick-fil-A. He's done things with the Rethink Group where we met on tour. He's done things. I mean, he's done a lot, and so connect with him, reach out to him. Feel free to do that. And then at I am Trey McKnight is also his Instagram handle. So give
Instagram,
him
Twitter, I'd love to connect.
Follow him, connect with him, shout him out if you're listening to the episode. Follow his podcast, listen to those episodes. I hope that you're encouraged and that you feel like you can take ownership of creating a synergetic culture around you. That's the whole purpose.
Let's go.
Trey, you're the man. Thank
Adam,
you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, man. This has been an honor.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.